Yeah, so discipline versus motivation again always comes at different times of the year. And then each time we do this, we can talk about different actionable steps. So, you're feeling a little bit low on motivation, how to then move that towards discipline so you can keep that your routines nice and consistent and you kind of don't end up on this roller coaster or yo-yo of progress. So motivation is kind of like our Kickstarter. So what we want is we really want, or what we're looking for is habits that last. So motivation is fleeting and discipline is dependable. So you need to rely on systems and not moods. So when we talk about systems, usually a lot of kind of what I learn or what I try to learn and implement into like business is systems. And the same goes for like our day-to-day routine. You need to build a system. So something that was always told to me when like I had my first coach when I was like 16 was like write down the things you do day to day and pretend that you're going to tell a robot how to live your life. So then you can start, you can send someone else to work for the day, for example. So that would kind of be your system essentially. So if you said, okay, cool, everyone got has a robot for a Monday, like a Monday, because it's the worst day of the week or whatever, you need to tell your robot what your systems are. So if it's waking up and the first thing you do is get in the shower, that's your first system. And then after that, what would you do? And that's where we start to implement the habits. For most people, it might be shower, clothes, coffee, teeth, and then out. That would be your systems that you would then program your robot with. So it's relying on those systems and creating systems like that you can then rely on to then become your future version of yourself or help you towards your goal. Discipline is built over time. So again, like this isn't something that just happens. It's something that needs to be trained, just like muscle. And what we always call it is reps. So it's still repetitions. So the same way that we do repetitions of an exercise, you need to do repetitions of like mental motivation and things that are going to help you in like achieve your goal. Or, if we're talking about discipline, what are the things that you want to be disciplined with? You need to practice it. So the more you practice, the better it comes. And motivation is just the catalyst for change. So you go on YouTube, you watch a motivational video, maybe you're watching or listening to this. It could be your catalyst for change, but then discipline needs to then transfer over after that. So the first thing, or what I always like to say is like become your future self. Like who is your future self? What does the person in 10 years time look like? What traits and behaviors do you want, or which ones do you want to get rid of? So if you're if you're thinking about 10 years time, maybe like retirement is on the horizon, or maybe you're working towards a new career or whatever, what does that person look like for you? Is that someone who wakes up early and trains in the morning, or is it someone who trains in the evening? And then when you start to build this like 10-year version of yourself, start to reverse engineer and what things can you start to implement now? Because if you're not heading towards that person that you want to be, you're only ever working backwards. So this is where we talk about kind of like behavior versus goals and what does your future self do daily? And then what one of those things or some of those things could you start doing today? And also, I think what's really key, especially when we're talking about things like this, is who is already like that. So, for example, if look, just I don't know why this came to my head, but the first thing that came to my head is, I went to university with loads of athletes, and like Mo Farah came from St. Mary, so everyone wanted to be like Mo Farah, and there was this kid who like was a long distance runner, and when the moral of the story is that he would literally pick apart Mo Farah's daily routine. He would do all the things that he would do, obviously implement to his version or how he could do that. He would like kind of break down the diet, like adjust it, because that was the person that he wanted to be. That was the future version of himself. And at least taking those things away from what Mo Farah done or, whatever athlete he looked up to did, he could then take that, break it apart, and then he could put that into his systems. So he started to pick up those behaviors and goals because that's the person he wanted to be. So if you have an idol or someone that you kind of look up to, it's not about being the exact person of them. So it's not about being them and idolizing them as a person because I don't believe in that. But you can take away their work ethic and the things that they've done to get to where they are. So that was just always an interesting one to me is how, you might not have all the answers, and that's okay because no one actually does. But if someone's in a position that you want to be, they know something that we don't. So we need to break that apart and then actually start to implement those things. So if Mo Farah used to run twice a day and you're not performing at long distance running, but you're only doing it once a day, maybe it's time to start doing it twice. So that's kind of like your future self. Obviously, burnout and breaking through, like burnout to breakthrough, so like getting past that stage. There are only three things that I can really say about that. So again, watch the previous video on like burnouts, because we went through that in detail. And then what I want to kind of cover or talk about on that is then plan your 3 day reset. So, in this between motivation and discipline, if you're not quite at discipline and you're not quite at motivation, you're probably in this burnout phase or kind of like a phase where you're like, I'm not quite sure where to go. So if you're kind of in that position, a 3 day reset, just to kind of reboot the body, to get you to where you want to be is a good idea. And the three things that you need to focus on is rest, food, and movement. Okay, so rest. How are you going to plan your sleep? How are you going to spend some mental time just to kind of completely de-stress from work? Food, like mindful eating, what things are going to be good for your body, what's going to be good for the brain, try and avoid junk foods. And then movement as well. Spending 10 minutes outside walking, the sun is getting a little bit nicer now. It's a little bit warmer. We have longer days. So, finding those 10 minutes just to get outside and walk is going to be really beneficial just to resetting your body. Now, this is the like, and again, like each time we talk about motivation, I try and give one thing that you can walk away from. So this one is going to be one. So this is what I want you to remember. So one. So simplicity is success. You don't need to do more. You just need to do less better. So what we end up doing is we start going, oh, okay, I need this, 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 and this, reaching for the shiny object, when actually you just need to do one thing really, really good, and then you end up getting to your goal. So choose one thing for the next 7 days. Track it, share it, celebrate it. For those of you inside the program, obviously you can start sharing it within the group chat. And if you're just kind of like come across this, either on Spotify or YouTube, celebrate it with friends, family, get someone to hold you accountable. So an example of that would be something like 20 squats every morning. Getting up, 20 squats, done. Okay. Simplicity is success. It could be a 10-minute walk after every meal. It could be a stretch before bed, one workout a day, or, track one meal. Simplicity is success. Pick one thing, do it for the next 7 days, become a master at it, and celebrate it. You don't need to do more, you just need to do less better. So just focus on that one thing, and that starts to become discipline. That starts to become routine. And then before you know it, you've created a habit that lasts. Then you focus on the next thing. So, I mean, over all of this, I kind of, we've spoken about a few things. So, or like we've come across, you know, each stage. Now it's time to actually come back. So this is the comeback season. We're coming into summer. Everyone falls off. Everyone has a time where they're on a low. We always go up the roller coaster and then we come back down. But then it's about getting back up again. Okay. Because if you stay at that low place, then obviously it becomes more and more difficult to come back. But also, if you're kind of watching this video, you're here now, it's time to make that comeback. Okay. You know, you need to start to create steps, whether it's something I've said now or whether it's from a previous video, start to plan that comeback, start to create your story, really think about, okay, cool, like I'm in this place now. How am I going to tell, my friends, family, children, whoever's around me, how am I going to tell them how I came back from this moment? How am I going to tell them that, I'm in a low point right now, but actually, this is what's going to become. This is going to be the future version of myself. And that's kind of what we need to start to create from now. So I'll end on this. Your story didn't end, it just got more interesting. Okay. This is a continuous story. The game never ends. We keep playing. And all you need to do is just make sure that the story just gets more and more interesting because it doesn't end. Okay. We just get better at doing, like, overcoming those hurdles. And again, that always comes down to discipline and using motivation when we need it to kind of get that kickstart and use it for a catalyst. But again, we need to build habits that last so we can get to that future version of ourselves. So hopefully that helps. And yeah, if you've got any questions, obviously leave them in the comments, or if you're in the group, if you're in the group, what I want you to do is share your one thing that you're going to do for the next 7 days. Um, and get a conversation going, see if anyone else is going to commit to one thing for the next 7 days. I'll pop a message in the chat as well. Let's see who we can get on it, because there's definitely something that we can all do. And I'll jump on it as well, and I'll send a picture or whatever accountability that I need to do for the next 7 days, and I'll pop it in the chat as well, because we can all add something to help us get to where we need to go. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully this one helped. Again, always just like little bits of, or little, sprinkles of fairy dust of motivation, or things that we can do to help us get to that next level. And I will see you in the next one.